Good afternoon, everyone, and we're just so grateful to the Lord for giving us a chance to come again and continue on these wonderful sessions that we've had on money matters, personal financial management. Thank you again so much to Alexia for leading this out, and the sessions have been just awesome, and we're just so glad that you're here. And for those who are joining us online, we're grateful that you can join us online, and we're looking forward to another awesome session. And today we have some special guests with us from Austin Realty, and they're going to come and introduce themselves here in a second. But as we normally do, let's just bow our heads and I'll offer a short word of prayer. Father and King, we honor you, we thank you, we bless you, O God, for this day that you have made. This is a wonderful day that you've created, and we're grateful to you. As we come another time to continue to learn and to study, we thank you, O God, for the talents and the knowledge and the skills that you have given to your people. We know that, God, this is a blessing from you, and this is another way in which you bless us and you help us to prosper. So I pray today, oh God, that as we listen, as we hear, that we will indeed learn, oh God, and we will save the information, and more than anything, we will put it into practice. Bless the presenters, I pray, oh God, and bless your people as we say thank you. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. So I'm going to ask Sister Alexia to come forward and to do the introductions for us, and then we're going to go ahead and jump into this session. And today we'll be talking about home ownership and investment property. All right.
Thank you so much, Pastor Reese. Welcome, welcome. I'm glad you all made it out. For those who did not make it out today, I plan to see you soon, okay? But thank you all for coming and presenting today. We have Austin Realty and Company with Ms. Shakia Austin and Christy Drew. And so they're going to take it over, and so we're just going to give them a warm welcome. But most of all, we thank you for sharing your knowledge and just taking the time on this rainy but sunny day to just, teach us and expand our knowledge. So thank you. So feel free to come and present.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Pastor Reese, and thank you, Alexa DeRizio. We are honored to be here. My name is Shakia Austin with Austin Realty & Co., and this is also Ms. Christy Drew.
Hello.
So today what we're going to discuss is the road to home ownership. What does that mean? What does it feel like? And make sure we educate you on different options as well. Okay.
Hello.
Is it? Okay, perfect. Okay, next slide. Okay, so we are your team. Christy and I have a wealth of knowledge. We have been doing home ownership for many years. We work with buyers, sellers, investors, landlords, tenants, property management, everything you name it, we do. So as you can tell, we love what we do. For us, this is not a job, it is a calling. And when we say calling, we are operating from our heart. That means that we help people through the process. And if you'll notice as we go through the slides, it's not about you having a house, it's about you having a home. A home is yours to call your own. So our calling is to make sure that we put you in that place and to make sure you are in the home you want, at the price you want, and at the best deal you want. Okay, so I'm gonna read this and we're gonna talk a little bit more in depth about this. Welcome to Austin Realty & Co., where your real estate dreams are set to become your reality, wrapped in the professionalism and the warmth of genuine care. Your journey with us is set to be both enjoyable and unique, marked by a fluid adaptability to your desires and requirements. Our focus is unwavering, fixed on you, your needs, your satisfaction, your triumph. Thank you. So what does this mean? When you meet with Christy or myself, we're going to sit down to get to know you and who you are. So if I can ask you, what kind of style do you like? And it could be anything for a house. Do you feel like you like traditional? Do you feel like you like new? Do you feel like you like something that is a resale that may have character in it? You like new, okay, nice. Homestead, okay. I like that, okay. So now we're getting to know you. So when someone says new, I'm thinking, okay, you must like new appliances, a new home. Okay, all right. So when you think of new, what does that mean to you? Nice. So you can convert it into your own, right? Yes. So now we're getting to know you and who you are. So one of the things is that what I put in front of people is also that while someone may like new, there's also a such thing as a new resale. Interesting, right? Yeah. Something new. New resale. Where it is new, it's a resale, and you can still make it your own. It doesn't mean that the home has to be 30 years old or 40 years old. It's a newer resale. So when we're getting to know you, we're getting to know who you are. We're getting to know who are your family members. Do you have an elderly person with you? Because if you say that, that's going to tell Christy and I that we need to look at something that has a bedroom on the main level, right? So they don't have to worry about walking up the stairs. That's getting to know who you are, your family dynamics. What do you like? What don't you like? You know, do you like to get on the highway? Do you work close to your job? You know, do you want something that's more local? Do you want to have neighbors? Some people don't. Now, right, it depends, right? It depends. You know, sometimes you have some good neighbors. You know, we heard some stories, unfortunately. And some people really like to be in a place where they don't have anyone near them. So when we look at this and we focus on you, your needs, your satisfaction, we are really understanding who you are as a person and as a family individually. Because that's going to matter when we talk about purchasing your what? Your home and not a house. It becomes a home, and that's important. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this. Preferred partners, where are they? So a lot of times when we go through the home buying process, a lot of people just think it's just the realtors. So we can take the credit, and we'll love to take the credit. But it's actually a whole village that's behind us. And that village consists of mortgage lenders, inspectors, homeowners insurance agents, and closing attorneys. So let's talk about each one of them individually. A mortgage lender is the person that is going to approve you for the amount you can afford. They're going to look at your income, your expenses. They're going to see what you have in savings, and that's going to determine what you are eligible for. Now, with the mortgage lenders, they have different programs. There's 4 across the whole United States. There's FHA, there is USDA, there's VA, and there's conventional. So is anyone in here a veteran or was in the military or anything? No one? Okay, no problem. Well, we do have anyone that has been in the military, a veteran. You actually have a lot of different perks. You actually do not have to pay for any down payment. I'm going to repeat that again. There's no down payment for VA clients if you're in the military or if you are a veteran. In addition to that, you get additional perks based on the lender, based on the program that's out there. Now, that's only one, right? We still have 3 more. Yeah. You have FHA, which is a government loan. So with FHA, basically what they do is set up guidelines that's going to help you in terms of making it a little bit easier and giving you room to be approved. And what they mean is that everyone has a debt-to-ratio income. So your debt-to-ratio income is your income against your debt. So they set up a parameter where they say, okay, this is your debt, and this is your income, and this is how much the house is. But let's make it easier when we give you a higher ratio where you can be approved, because they're looking at how much debt you have and how much house you can afford. That's going to be FHA, okay? There's also conventional. Conventional is a little different. Their debt-to-ratio is not as high, but they do give you more options in terms of down payment. So how many people think that you have to put down 20% or $20,000 to get a house? Anybody? You already thought so, right? Okay. Yes. Yes, at one time that was it, right? But so times have changed. With conventional, you only have to put down about 3% of the sales price. And can you, I can't think right now, but can you do the math for me on 300, 300,000? What that looks like? Yes, I can't even, is it, how much? About 9,000. Okay, so imagine that. You purchase a house for 300,000 and 3% down payment is $9,000. You don't need 25, you don't need 30,000, it's 9,000. But let me explain the back end of that. The down payment is your front end. The back side is the closing cost, okay? So the closing cost means that those are fees that comes from the attorney's fee, because we need the attorney to make sure that the contract, everything is valid. You also have fees like insurance, you have where they run liens and titles, things of that nature. So our goal as realtors is to go ahead and get to negotiate for the seller to either pay the full closing costs or some of it, or most of it. That's the goal, right? So if we do get the seller to go ahead and pay the full closing, you came to the table with $9,000. But let me take it a step further. Outside of the loans that you're approved for, there's down payment assistance. There's grants. So can I tell you that some years ago, I actually had a client that received a down payment assistance program and the seller paid full closing costs. She walked away with a $500 credit. So that means that she did not come out of pocket because of the down payment assistance programs and because of the grants. Now, let me explain. When it comes to grants and down payment assistance programs, you do have to be eligible. There's several out there. Some of them are going to say that you have to live in a certain county, you have to have a certain credit, you have to work in a certain area. It just depends. And what the mortgage lender will do is go through to see what you are eligible for and what's gonna make sense to get you the most to help you through the process. I'll go, you know, if anybody could buy a house with no money, that would be great, right? Yeah, that would be great. That would be great. Sign me up. Sign me up again. That would be great. So that's the goal. So that's the part of the mortgage lender side. Let's talk a little bit about inspectors. Once you get your house, you want to make sure the home is inspected. It's important. We can only, whatever we see is just in front of us, right? But we don't know what's behind those walls. We don't know what's in those pipes. We don't know what's going on with the roof. And only the inspector can see that. Now, I have a question for you, sir. You said that you like probably a new home. Would you want to have an inspector inspect your new home? Great answer. Great answer, yes. Absolutely. That's the one they need to inspect. I want you guys to think about something. It's humans that is building. We all make mistakes, right? All of us make mistakes. Excuse me. Okay, is that better? Okay, sorry about that. Yes. So it's humans that's building. We all make mistakes. So if a human is building the house, a mistake can happen. While it's new, it can happen. Okay? Yes, you get warranties. They have something called a 210. Not all, each builder has their own warranty, but most of them do a 210, which means that you get 2 years on the inside and 10 years on the outside. But wouldn't it be nice for the inspector to catch any issues on the front end? It's worth it. I find that a lot of buyers, when they go for a new home, they do not want it to be inspected. I highly recommend for it to be inspected, highly. And not only that, but remember, these are our preferred partners. So Christy and I are making sure that we are referring you to good people that we worked with and continue to work with. They must provide the same love and the same care that we provide for you, completely. So if they are inspecting your home, they're gonna do it like they're inspecting their own home. That's what you want. Perfect. The next thing we're gonna touch on is homeowners insurance agents. So we all need insurance on our home. God forbid anything happens. But one of the things I want to talk about is that what if you purchase a property that's near a lake, a flood zone? It looks pretty, but that means that it requires more insurance. So this is where the homeowner's insurance is going to come in, and they're going to see exactly where the home is located, exactly how much would they recommend for it to cover dwelling or in case anything happens. We have referrals for that as well. And the last part is the closing attorneys. So the closing attorneys, and I typically get this question very often. The closing attorneys do not work in the state of Georgia, at least. They do not work for the buyer or the seller. They only work for the lender. So sometimes when I have questions where someone may say, hey, do they have their own attorney? If you're here in the state of Georgia, it doesn't matter who the closing attorney is. When we're referring you to one, it's just one that we like. They like to have fun. They make the closing great, a great experience, great communication, great follow-up. So everyone has their own preference. But they will always represent the lender, the lender's interest, because that's who holds the money. That's who's lending the money for you to get the house.
Are they hired by the lender, or can you give me someone to work with the lender?
That is a great question. Are they hired by the lender, or can we give you someone to work with? They are not hired by the lender. So either the buyer's agent or the seller's agent is going to recommend a closing attorney. But what happens is that the buyer incurs the cost. So remember when I was going back to explaining that you have a down payment, which is your front cost. You have the closing cost, which is your back end cost. The closing attorney falls on the back end. So it's always going to be the buyer's expense. But remember I said, what is our goal? To either have the seller cover the full closing cost or some of it. So that's the goal, because those expenses will occur on the end. That is a great question. Yes. Next. Okay, so searching for your home. At this point, we have got to know exactly who you are. You like new construction, you want an inspector, you want the house to be your home. That's the goal. So the next thing we want to do is discuss price. Remember, the mortgage lender is going to determine what you're eligible for. Based on that eligibility is where we want to look within that price range. Now, I will tell you a few secrets. So I'll use an example. I had a buyer this week, new buyers. It was, I think it was Tuesday or Wednesday. Just started working with them. We went out to view homes, and they settled with a new construction home. Typically, the new construction homes, their price is their price. There's not really a lot of room for negotiation. But knowing me, I of course negotiated. So when we talk about price, they didn't want to spend no more than $360. They could go higher, but it was an option, it was a choice. They wanted to stay around this range. We found the house, $361. The husband loved it, the wife liked it. And one of the things that people don't realize, at least with Christy and I, we're watching and we're making sure we understand exactly if something is not selling right. I knew she liked the neighborhood, but something was missing. So I asked her, I said, your husband loves it, but tell me, what's going on? Is it something you're missing? She said, I love the location, I love the school district, I love the floor plan. It doesn't have a porch. I said, hold on one second. I called the agent and I said, listen, she loves this community. Do you have any new builds that have a porch? She said, we sure do. We have one right now, but it's $379. I said, ooh, $379? That's not what she want to spend. I said, Ruby, she wants to be in the 360s. What can we do? I've worked with Ruby before, and she said, well, you know what, Shakia, you know the prices are. I said, I know that, but you also know me. So what we gonna do, right? So one of the things is that you do have to be careful as a new builder, because if you lower the price too low, it can mess up the numbers, meaning the comps in the neighborhood, the value of the home. So We settled on 368. She was above 7,000, but I'm gonna tell you what's important. When we looked at the numbers, every thousand you spend is only $6 to $7 more in your mortgage. She got the home she wanted. 7 times 6 is 42. See, I knew that. I couldn't do the, 3% of the 300, but I got that one. $42 extra to be in your home. So when we look at it, we have to look at the bigger picture. I'm listening, paying attention to your needs, your wants, everything you're thinking about. And then the question becomes, does it make sense? Because my goal is not to put you in a situation. I was not gonna let her buy the house at 380, but I knew the 7,000 difference was not gonna hurt her. Not only did she get that, we got the seller to pay $10,000 in closing. Oh, I'm not finished. She got 4.99 interest rate. 10,000 in closing, the price from 379 to 368, and 4.99 interest rate. We're closing next month. In one day. I don't play. In one day. But what I want you guys to see, because I'm gonna tell you something, and I shared this with Alexi, I called her because it touched my heart. You know, sometimes I just do what I do, and I do it from my heart. I didn't know what it meant to her when we settled on the price and we sat in Ms. Ruby's office and went through everything. She looked over at me and she said, Shakia, you did an amazing job. You're the best person. She said, you know what? You asked me what was missing, and I said the porch. I didn't even know you was making a phone call. You understand what I'm saying? She didn't know. But in my mind, that's what I'm supposed to do, right? Because this is my calling. It's not a job. I had to listen. I had to hear her needs and wants. She would have walked away from her dream home because there was no porch. So when she said that to me, it did something to me because I didn't realize that it was such a big deal because I'm just doing what I'm supposed to do. And that's what happened. And then the lot that she had is, oh my gosh, it was just bigger than the one that we were looking at. Beautiful lot for her daughters. It just worked out so perfect. But everything is tied in together. Everything goes back. So sometimes I think that when people think about real estate, they think it's just the numbers. It's not. It's about your experience. It's the feeling, the process. It was so important for me, not for her just to get, just anything. It was important for her to get the home. And at the home, it had to make sense. $42 more a month to get what she wanted. But she got a 4.99 and $10,000 in closing. Amen. Okay, next slide. Let's go. Oh, you know, I apologize. Go back. I was on the road there, so I moved too fast. I'm sorry. So let's talk about location. Location is so important. I remember when my husband and I first moved to Atlanta, and I wasn't in real estate. I had no clue. I didn't know anything about real estate. And when we stayed at, I never forget, actually it's right in Dunwoody, when we stayed at, they offer us to purchase it. It's kind of like a condo, a building, a great location by Perimeter Mall. And they offer us for about $130,000. And I never forget me telling my husband I was not in real estate. I said, oh, we could do better. We're going to Gwinnett. We're going to buy a big old house. We're not buying this. So we did move to Gwinnett, and we're still in Gwinnett. And we did get a house. But today, the one bedroom is worth about $400,000. So when I'm with my husband and I drive past there, I keep on driving. Because I promise you, every time he look at me, don't look at me, I just keep on going. And I don't speed, but that one time I do speed. Yeah, I speed right past. And you know, it's so interesting. One of my friends, Rashonda, she's a realtor, and she just closed. Well, not just, I want to say it was 2 months ago. She just closed in here. And when she told me Cotillion Drive, my heart just dropped. I said, don't even mention it. Congratulations, but don't mention it. Just don't. So when I tell you, you know, location matters. So at that time, I wasn't thinking about it. Dunwoody is a prime location. And look what it's worth right now, right? So when we think about location, what is important to you? What makes sense? We're thinking about your life, your kids, your work, your livelihood. You know, not everybody likes to get on the highway. Some people do. You know, not everyone wants to be in Atlanta. Some people want to be on the outskirts. Location is important because everything is connected to it. And I'm going to tell you, when I made that comment to him, we did get the house in Gwinnett. And I loved everything about the house. It was a new build. Guess what was the problem? Location. We wound up selling. It was not a good location for us. And we got so caught up in, hey, this is the, we didn't look at everything. So when we're looking to search for your home, not your house, your home, we're looking at price, location. The next thing we're looking at is school district, right? Because for those who have kids, that's important. It's important. You want to know exactly where your kids are going to, what type of school it is, what are, you know, the ratings on the school, everything is important. Not only that, but that drives up the price. It drives up the price. So the house that I'm in right now, I'm in Brookwood School District, which is in Lawrenceville. That's one of the top school districts. And what's so ironic is that before I came a broker, my first broker, she was the agent on that house. Leslie, she called me, and she and I have this spiritual connection. It's strange. It's strange, but she said, this is your house. And I said, I don't know. You know, I'm not sure about that. And she said, no, this is your house. I know what you feel about a school district. It's Brookwood School District. This is your house. Lo and behold, that became my house that I'm still in today. One of the top school districts. You know, so all of that matters as well. The next thing we're going to talk about is single family versus ranch. Okay, so come on with it. Who likes a ranch? Who likes a single family? How we feeling? Ranch? The ranch. Okay. Your knees like the ranch. Okay. Right. Single family.
No, both the ranch.
Oh, gotcha. I like, okay, wait a minute. You sure you don't have your real estate license? Because
I was just asking, is there a difference?
Yes, there is, and that's a great question. So with the ranch, it's going to be one whole level. But I got something for you. You know, I always got something. I have now noticed with a lot of the new builders, they have a ranch, everything is on one level, but they have a room upstairs, which can either be a bedroom or a flex room. So if you do feel like I want a ranch, but I do want some stairs and have that feeling, that is there. I have another one for you, a ranch on the basement.
Is that what they call a split level ranch?
That is different. Right, but that's a great question. A split level ranch, that's gonna be where you have the ranch and you have the stairs going down, kind of like a mother-daughter plan, sort of, something like that. Now that would be different from a ranch on a basement. Right, but that's a great question. Because it gets a little confusing when you think about, it almost seems the same.
You have the den downstairs.
There you go. See? We already know what he's doing with his downstairs, right? Yes, so it just depends on the person. Some people like single family, they love that. But, you know, as I get older, I start thinking about a ranch, and like Miss Alexia said, the knees, and you know. But I will tell you, the ranches, they are making them where they're so huge inside. Yeah, open floor plan, like Chrissy said, yes. Open concept, absolutely, and you don't necessarily feel like you're in a ranch, per se. If you don't, you know, some people kind of may not like the term, or, you know, but you actually get the same feeling as if you're in a single family. So they're making them very beautiful, very. Actually, in the same neighborhood that I just went under contract with the buyer with Ms. Ruby, we looked at a ranch. They still wanted a single family, but on that particular ranch, it was a 2.99 interest rate. And that's in Hampton, Georgia. Yeah, Hampton, Georgia. So see, there you go. It was a ranch. And when oh yeah, 2.99 interest rate. Built brand new. It was a 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath. See? I'll be talking to you afterwards. Yes. So there's a lot that's out there. There's a lot. But we have to use our resources. And Christy and I are well connected. We both have worked with Ms. Ruby. So we know exactly, what she offers, different incentives, things like that. The other thing is the interior exterior. So some people like a traditional, some people like a farmhouse. You know, some people may say, hey, I don't want a new build because I want character. The new builds look alike. Some people would say, hey, I like the new build because I like the newer look. It just depends. A slab, a basement. So a slab, of course, is if you do a ranch or a single family home and nothing underneath. And then you have an option for a basement. Typically with a new build, the basements are unfinished. So you'll have, and once in a blue moon, they'll run the special where it is finished, but mostly it's not finished. The other part that's important is that we have to consider your family members. So I have some clients that have kids, but they'll say, don't worry about the kids, this is what we want. And then, and then I have some clients that like to consider and include the kids' needs as well. So we're thinking about, like we said earlier, if you have someone elderly that stays with you, it's probably important to have something on a lower level. And not only that, but a full bathroom for them, right? So we're thinking about that. So my god sister, actually, no, not Hampton, it's Madonna, I'm sorry. I had to think about it. So I sold her house, I feel like it's been about 2 years now. But for my godmother, at that time, she was sick, and so my god sister wanted for her to know what it feels like to have a master bedroom. I couldn't believe that we found a house, new built house, 2 master bedrooms downstairs. 2, master. Yes, nice size closet, and guess what? She still had the upstairs. So there's a lot that's out there. It's not saying that you can't do or you can't get what you want. We just have to use resources, our connections. We have to do a lot of searching to make sure. And that it stays within your price range, right? Yes, ma'am.
When does it make sense to sell your home and get something if your family plan changes versus renovating your home? For example, let's say that my mother is going to move in with us. And I need bedroom and bathroom downstairs, which I currently don't have. But would it make sense, or when would you tell me it makes sense to just sell what you have and buy something that meets your needs versus renovating what you have?
Absolutely, that's a wonderful question. So it's a couple of things that goes into play with it. The first thing that I'm looking at is the market. What's happening in the market right now? Because if we're in a market that the houses are not selling, I wouldn't want you to put yours up for sale. And then, because the longer it sits on the market, it hurts you. So I'm strategizing. I'm looking to see, okay, what's happening first? The other thing I'm looking at is, let's walk through your house. Let's talk about the space. Let's talk about what can be done or cannot be done. Right, because a lot of times, you know, we have ideas in our mind, and we say, hey, this is what we want, but then we walk through, we're like, well, where is it gonna go? You know, so the strategy is, it just depends on where we are at that time, what's happening in the market, and then let's take a look at your house. Can that be done? Now let's see if it can be done, what are the expenses versus selling and buying, right? You see what I mean? Because when you sell your house, most people have equity, but it has happened with time that you upside down. So we need to see, what does that look like? Depending on the amount of equity, does it make sense to now purchase a house, go in when you do no renovations, and you still have funds remaining? So we're gonna strategize to see what makes sense. Yes, does that answer your question? Okay, great, great, that was a wonderful question. Yeah, you had me thinking on that one. So great question. All right, next slide. Okay, so finding your home. So now that we discussed who you are, what matters to you, what is your style, what do you like, your dislikes, and we find a home, we're gonna go ahead and prepare something called an offer. So it's called a purchase and sales agreement. And with the purchase and sales agreement, we're saying to the buyer, the seller or the builder, this is what we're offering on your home. This is the date we would like to close on this home for you to get ownership. And this is how much we're asking if you can provide to us. So that's called the offer that we prepare. So the negotiation comes in when we submit an offer and the seller's agent come back to me and say, Shakia, woo-wee, you guys asking for a lot. And I say, I know, we are, right? However, we can do this, we can't do this. So when I'm thinking about it in negotiation, I am thinking about getting my client as much as possible. And what's important, let's just say someone has a house and have beautiful furniture, and my client loves it, but the seller don't want to sell it, right? I am thinking about how can I make this work for my client to get what they want, and for the seller to be happy with giving them what they want. You know, it has to make sense. You have two people that's coming to the closing table, the buyer and the seller. You have to meet in the middle. So negotiation, it involves it's a process, because I'm really making sure I am setting the buyer up. If I look at a resale home, I may ask for a warranty, because I'm thinking to myself, this is not a new build. I have to protect my client. That's a part of negotiation. Also, when we look at funds, my client may possibly have a limited amount of funds. I know that I need a certain amount for closing costs. So now I'm going to work around another strategy. So this is something Chrissy and I have done and we have been successful at. So the other strategy is, the house is $350. My client is approved for $400,000. However, they need closing cost funds because they don't have a lot of funds. You know, that $9,000, they may only have $5,000. And the seller is saying, I cannot give no more. So what Chrissy and I would do, another strategy, we'll offer $5,000 more for the seller to give my client $5,000. You see how that worked? Both parties are happy. It's called a strategy. It's negotiation. We gave you more for you to give the client cash. The client got cash, and you got the amount. It's an even. But the way we have to do it is to increase that price, what we're giving for the person to get this amount. That's a part of negotiation. So when we're negotiating, we're looking at everything. We're not just saying, hey, just sign the paperwork, that's it. No, it has to make sense for the client. And not only that, as a Georgia licensed realtor, we're signing the contract as well. So that means that we have to make sure that we're working in your best interest. And everything is there. Earnest money. So earnest money is a good faith deposit. In the state of Georgia, it's not something that must be given, but I can tell you that most sellers will not accept an offer without it. So what that means is that the seller is saying, you as the buyer would like to purchase my home, but you want me to take it off the market, and I don't know if your loan is gonna go through, so they ask for earnest money deposit, which means that we're given, depending on the cost of the house, is usually 1% of the sales price. So if the house is $300,000, we're giving $3,000. We're saying this is our deposit to say that we are going to purchase your home. Now let's talk about the earnest money. If for any reason that the buyer decides to back out, which Chrissy's gonna talk more about, a due diligence period, you get that earnest money back. So we're protecting you. We know the dates, we know the timeline. You have time to get the funds back. But the seller is saying, I need this earnest money because if you default and you walk away, I deserve to get paid for the time it's off the market. Can you blame them? You can't. That means that other buyers could have looked at the house. That is the earnest money. Yes, ma'am.
All right, so the earnest money is like the escrow account, or is it separate?
Separate.
Okay.
Good question.
Okay.
Absolutely. So your escrow, and that's a great question. So your escrow is going to be where funds are stored. So when you go to the closing table, they're going to collect 1 year of homeowner's insurance. That's the escrow.
Okay.
See, everything that they're collecting up front, it goes in
Yes.
that escrow.
Got
And
it.
it's held by the mortgage lender. Yes. Mm-hmm.
All right.
Who holds the earnest money, and what happens if you change your mind?
Great question. Who holds the earnest money, and what happens if you change your mind? So what I prefer, but is more than one option, I prefer for the closing attorney to hold the earnest money. Depending on the contract, the broker may say, I'll hold the earnest money. So it depends on what's negotiated in the contract. It can either be the broker, which is the brokerage firm, or it could be the closing attorney. I prefer the closing attorney because the second part to your question is, what happens with the earnest money if something goes wrong? And I had a situation like that. The closing attorney makes the decision on who gets the earnest money. They don't have a relationship, even if that's your preferred closing attorney, they're not gonna lose their license. They're gonna look at the scenario and see exactly what happened and who is supposed to get the money. It makes it harder when the brokerage firm holds it because they will want to keep the funds, but legally they cannot. Legally, they have to make sure that, everything is documented to prove as to why they can keep it, but it makes it harder. So the closing attorney is preferred, and they look at all the information. We have to send it into them and say, hey, we're not gonna move forward. This is what happened. They take a few days to examine it, and they come back and let us know who's gonna get the funds. But I have had a situation like that, yes. Absolutely. Okay, closing costs. So you guys heard me talk about this a lot. That's the money we always try to get, right? That's it. Okay, I'm just gonna go back on that real quick. Closing costs, it depends on what kind of loan you have. So there's a maximum that we can ask for. So FHA is 6%, up to 6%, and conventional is up to 3%. So that means that if your house is $300,000 and the closing cost is $9,000, if you have if you have a conventional loan, we can't ask for more than $9,000. But if you have an FHA loan, we can double that and ask for up to $18,000. So that's a part of the rules and regulations for lenders. Special stipulations. So special stipulations is pretty much where our Georgia contract forms for real estate pretty much is kind of set up, and we just fill in certain things. But special stipulations is where I would go. Yes, sir.
Sorry, just to go back
Sure.
a little bit.
Absolutely.
With the closing costs, shouldn't they, or do they normally add the earnest money to the closing costs?
Oh, good question. I missed that. See, he got his real estate license. I'm convinced. Great question. What happens is that at the end of closing, you get something called a settlement statement. The settlement statement is proof that you closed on your house. What they're gonna do is look at all the expenses. Everything is on there. And let's just say your closing costs came to, I'm gonna say $15,000. You put $3,000 in earnest money, and the seller contribute $10,000 towards closing. So what they're gonna do is, out of that $15,000, deduct the $10,000 from the seller, and then they're gonna say, you had an earnest money deposit of $3,000. We're gonna deduct that. And they're gonna say, sir, now you just have to pay $2,000 at the closing table. Great question. Right on point. Yes. Yes, so special stipulations is just an addition that we add. So for example, to see if I can think of something. A seller has a big screen TV on the wall that the buyer loves. I would add in special stipulation that the seller agrees to leave the big screen TV for the buyer. Another thing is a homeowner's warranty. I would add it in there. Hey, I ask for everything. If you don't ask, you have to ask, right? So that's special stipulations. And the last thing is closing date. So the closing date is pretty much, we kind of come up with it based on the situation. In the state of Georgia, we close pretty quickly. I've closed on a house in 2 weeks in the state of Georgia, from the time that we have gone under contract to the closing date in 2 weeks. I've had situations where it was longer. And sometimes it depends. Sometimes the seller would say, hey, I just need a little bit more time, so we'll schedule it out for 30 days, maybe 45 days. Very rarely do you see 60, but it does happen. Now, another thing that I just want to point out, and this is more on the seller side, if there is a closing and the house is not vacant, the seller still lives there, there's something called a temporary occupancy. So that basically means that the buyer and seller have closed on the house. The buyer have taken ownership with the keys, right? So now they own the house. But there's a document that says the seller can live here for 2 weeks to give you time to move. And those are things that we do put in place as protection in case you know, you need more time. Sometimes it's not 2 weeks, sometimes it's just a week, sometimes it's 3 weeks. But that is an option as well. So just want to point that out. Yes, sir.
So in that case, don't you charge the seller rent?
Good question.
Because I've had that experience.
I was going to say, very experienced questions. I have, when it has gone to a month. When it's a week or so, typically the agents just kind of work it out where they're okay if it's a couple of days or a week. But when you're talking about 3 weeks to a month, we have charge, yes. And I have had a situation where it went to, I believe it was a month, and I think that was 1 month rent that they did. I think it was about $1,100 or something like that at the time. So yeah, so it depends. If it's a couple of days, they usually just say, hey. Now what they will do, we have written in that same agreement, if you're supposed to vacate the property on this date at 5 p.m. and you're still there, there's another fee for that. So we have it set up very well that this is the agreement, this is when you leave, and it will state if there is a fee you have to pay to stay afterwards. Everything is set up. Thankfully, it has not been a situation everyone has followed what is in the contract, so I'm just gonna say prayerfully, that remains the same. Yes. Okay, so we submitted the offer and it is now under contract. And I'm gonna pass it over to my lovely real estate advisor, Christy Drew.
Hello, hello, hello. Hi. So we are now under contract. So this is the exciting part. This is when the home buyers are getting excited. We're one step closer. So the steps, what I'm gonna go over are some contingencies, and these are here to protect the buyer, you the buyer. So you can go to the next slide. All right, so I like to look at the due diligence period. I like to compare it to or call it the doing your homework before, doing your homework before purchasing. So with this step, during the due diligence period, it is typically 3 to 5 days. During this time, that's when you need an inspection like Shakia spoke about. And like she said, even if it's new construction, definitely get an inspection. I don't know if you guys heard of that on the news, but back in February, I actually sent it to my inspector, the article, but back in February, it was LGI Homes, a new construction builder. They were actually telling the home buyers they're a one-stop shop and they didn't need a realtor and they did not need an inspector. And the lady's roof, she almost died. The lady's roof came through. Her neighbors had HVAC issues, the ceiling. It was just a lot of things with that new construction. So like Shakia said, and I'm gonna repeat it, even if it is new construction, get everybody. It's not mandatory, but it's highly recommended for everybody to get an inspector. All right, and then as your realtor, we will then assist you with coming up with a negotiation strategy. So whether you need to request repairs, whether you need to negotiate a price reduction, or just ask for seller seller concessions. So it's our duty as a realtor to, figure out what that next step is with you, whether we need to, negotiate or, whatever we need to do on your behalf. And at the end of the due diligence period, the buyer can either proceed with the transaction, they can negotiate, or they have the option to back out the deal. And you are safe with your earnest money, so you will be protected during this period. Next. All right, this also protects the buyer, so the finance contingency. So it's typically 12 to 21 days. And I like to look at this process as, let's call it the we're gonna call it the evaluation period. So this is when the lender evaluates their risk. The primary purpose of this contingency is just to ensure you, the buyer, that if for some reason the loan does not fall through, you're safe and your earnest money is protected. another one of the contingencies. And so I like to look at this one like if we were in school, it's like the final exam time. And so this is one of the key components in the underwriting process. So during the underwriting, the lender assesses the value of the property. So sometimes you may get a appraisal and it does not appraise for, you know, the price. It appraises for less than what, it appraises for less than what you're asking for, yes. So the buyer and the seller does not the buyer and the seller does not pick the appraiser. This is what the lender does. However, when the buyer, they have the opportunity to pay for this up front, or they can also pay for this. It can be added to closing costs. And so the appraisal contingency allows a buyer to walk away from the deal if the home appraisal is lower than the agreed upon sale price. And if no negotiation can be made. So first you can try to negotiate. However, if no negotiation is made, you can walk away from that deal, and again, your earnest money is protected. And this, it gets more exciting as I go along, everybody. We're one step closer. So us realtors, when we see that clear to close, we're excited, the buyer's excited, everybody is excited, okay? So when a buyer receives a clear to close status, this is when all the contingencies have ended, all the documents have been verified, you're fully approved, you know, and the loan applications and everything, you know, I said they're fully approved. You're fully approved, sorry. So this period, I like to refer it to like you're getting your final grade. Yes. So this is your final grade status. All right, and then it gets even better. Next slide. So this is the most exciting day. So prior to, you know, your actual closing, you want to get a final walkthrough, which typically is done the day before or the day of closing. And you also, you know, want to wire your closing costs. You want to be ahead of the game and wire those closing costs over to the attorney. And this is what I want to call graduation day. So this is the graduation day. This is the most exciting part. So closing day is the final, you know, it's the final step in the real estate transaction. This is when the ownership is transferred from the seller to the owner. The buyer and the sellers, they will review and sign documents. Some of those documents, like the deed, the loan agreement, the closing disclosure, and any other necessary paperwork. It's lots of paperwork, but you're in a good mood signing those papers because you know you're about to get that key. And after closing, you know, buyers will receive a copy of all those signed documents and they will get the key. And after that, everybody is moving day. Yes. So it's you know, so the contingencies that I went over, like I said, it is, you know, put in place to help you all as a buyer, because sometimes things does not go the way that we want it to go. However, you are protected, and when you have a good realtor, they're gonna help you negotiate and get you through that process where you're not getting taken advantage of. So just like with that inspector I spoke about, those home buyers that was with that builder, they were taken advantage of because they did not have a realtor to protect them. They did not, you know, and if they had a realtor, they would have let them know what Shakia and I said. Get an inspection, it doesn't matter. So we are here as your realtors to help you, guide you through the way, and to protect you throughout the process. Go ahead.
I have a few questions.
Yes.
First one is on the flip side, if I'm a seller,
Yes.
right, say we want to sell our home. It's increased in value quite a bit. Now, for the appraisal and the evaluation, we've done a few things around the yard and stuff like that. That brings up the value. How does it work with the way our neighbors treat their yard? Because um, let's just say 1 yard across the road is a mechanic shop. The other,
It can definitely
yeah,
affect
all that affects it.
Yes, it can definitely affect when your appraisal. And I know, like they always tell us, like sometimes you don't want the what is it, the biggest and the best house in the neighborhood because sometimes those other homes can bring your value down. However, if you have the worst home in the neighborhood, those other homes can bring the value up. So it just, it just depends, but that can bring the value down. Your neighbors can mess it up for you. So sometimes, and it's, that's a good question because sometimes a lot of people, they try to do so many upgrades to their home thinking it's going to bring the value up, but that's not necessarily true. Certain upgrades can, but it's not always necessarily true.
Now,
Yes.
Okay, great. I just to add to that also, it's so important that if you decide to sell your home, you do meet with a realtor because when we come in, we are evaluating and we're looking to say this needs to be done or don't spend money on this. I actually had a client that I went to I think it was in January in Conyers, and she said, I want to paint the garage. I want this to be. I said the garage will have no bearing on whether your house holds a value or if it sells. They probably won't even look at the garage, to be honest with you. Save your money. Save your money. And the house, honestly, was in great condition. Truthfully, I didn't see where anything needed to be done through my evaluation and my experience. But for the seller, they demanded that that's something they want to do. And what my job is not for you to spend a lot of money, but I want you to spend it where it makes sense.
Yes.
You understand? Where it makes sense. Because guess what? The money that you're thinking you may need to spend, we may have someone that come in that wants to purchase the home, and a part of the negotiation is for you as a seller to pay $2,000 in closing. That $2,000 that don't need to go in your house can go towards that because what we're trying to do, get the house under contract. So we have to look at a strategy, what makes sense. So this is why I say if you are a seller, it's best to speak with a real estate agent first for them to come in and evaluate to see what's needed and what's not needed.
okay, question number 2. What about home improvement that did not go through county no, not approval. What's that word? No, not approval. Yeah. What do you call that again? No. The construct. Let's just call it construction license. Permit.
Permit.
You did not. You did, like for example, I'm a builder, and I build a deck on my house. I didn't go through any permit. From experience, we sold a house in New York. Didn't go through any permit, and when we decide to sell the house, the banks subtract the value of that deck out of the selling price.
Right, because there wasn't a part.
Because
Yep,
there was
it
no
wasn't.
permit.
That is so correct. And excuse me, Christy, I don't mean to interject. I was just going to add that. So when they look at the original floor plan, it was not a part of it.
That's exactly what happened.
Right, absolutely. So in order for it to be counted in terms of value, I may come out better. Sorry. Thank you. So in order for it to be evaluated in the value of it, there has to be some permit to show that it was done correctly through the county that your home is located in. And that's what happened. It was not a part of the original. And if there are any additions, that's where it has to be proof to show that. Yeah, so that's, thank you for bringing that up. Absolutely, that's the purpose of the permit. Yes, ma'am.
Hello. You had a question? Oh, okay. Let me hand it the mic.
I do have one, but it's not related to what you're currently discussing.
Okay,
I
go
don't know
ahead.
if you dealt with
okay.
it earlier.
No, go ahead.
So my question is, how do I pull out the equity from my home without affecting my current interest rate? Is there a way to do it?
It- you-
To pull out the equity from my home without affecting my current interest rate?
Unfortunately, it's not a way. Because what they're going to do, that's going to be considered a refinance. And it just depends on what kind of refinance. And the refinance, they have one, like, when I did my refinance, I did it during COVID, so my interest rate is 2.5 on my house. But that's because I did it during that time. I didn't pull equity, but if you pull equity, it's a refinance, and now they're going to now charge you based on the current interest rate. Unfortunately, it's no way. I wish there was, but unfortunately not. Yeah, great question. Yes. I hate to be the kind of news. I wish I could say something else.
Any other questions? Yes.
My question is, when it comes to the, I heard you say earlier that the appraiser is hired by the lender, I
Lender,
believe it is?
correct.
Okay,
Also neutral.
okay, so when it comes to that. Okay, I thought it was just me. Okay, so the appraiser gets paid on the front end or the back end when it comes to the closings?
So it can be both. So sometimes the buyer can pay upfront, and then if not, it can be added in to your closing costs.
Okay.
So it goes either way. So like I just had a sale the other day, and that one was added in on the end.
Okay. All right.
And like my broker always tells me, she make sure I check and make sure, because sometimes they may add it up. They may pay up front and it's still added in that closing cost. So
It's happened to me
she's
before,
like,
so
double
I know.
check and make sure that it was not added up front. So yes.
Okay, because I've had it double dip before, and I was like, no,
Yes.
I declined that, and they took it off.
Yes, you
All
got
right.
it.
So, and when it comes to inspections, because I know depending on the type of inspection, they have different kinds of inspections. Do they include that in one inspector where they have all the experiences in one? Because every state is different. I'm coming from Florida. So they had different inspections for different things, and I had to pay for each one separately.
Oh, wow.
So it just depends. I don't know how it is here in Georgia. So educate me, please.
Okay. Yes, it depends. So, for example, I had a client in Covington, and her house was on septic. We had to get a separate inspector for septic. Yes. Yes, ma'am. And so another thing is with the inspection, sometimes they test for lead. Like if there's things like that. Most inspectors do that, but once in a blue moon, there are some that don't. And so that's what we're looking at. If the house is built before 1978, you want to get it inspected for that. So when I look at that, pretty much all the inspectors we work with
our
do that.
preferred
Right.
inspectors do.
Yes, but if you have your own inspector, you're welcome to use them, but if they do not, then we would recommend our preferred. Yes.
Any other questions?
Usually anywhere from 350 to 450, depending on the inspector. About the same. Yes, and then the appraisal is typically about 500 to 550. Oh, I'm sorry. Sure. Thank you, sir.
Do they do radon inspecting and testing?
Yes, it depends on the inspector. Radon?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
they do that. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and they'll leave it. So it's something that they leave there. They
Gas
come
that-
early for.
That comes up out of the rock through your home.
And they have to leave the test there and then come back and they'll let them know whether it's the reading on the test. Yeah, but most of them do that. Yeah. Right. Georgia is just different.
I have a question. I didn't know if you had planned to talk about it today, using real estate as a form of passive income or investments, or I'm not experienced in that, but I wanted to know, as a person looking forward to retirement in the next 10 years, is that something you would recommend for a person like me, or have I already passed that? Has the window closed?
No. I don't think the window doesn't close.
It won't close on that.
The window never
Real
closes.
estate is where the window does not close, definitely. I feel like it, even regardless of the market, it's still always a good investment. Like people, sometimes they're saying, the market's not good. Even if not, even if you don't get the best interest rate, you can always refinance. It's always, I wouldn't let anybody deter me from it. It's definitely, opportunity in that, and it's not too late, for sure.
Absolutely. And if I can add to that, Christy,
Yes.
too, just two things made me think about something else as well. But in terms of the investment, absolutely. Absolutely do it. My mom has property down here. She lives in New Jersey, and that extra income is paying some of those bills. Okay, so definitely do it. And there's so many things you can do. If it's, rent to, Airbnb. Some people are now doing the new thing, which is content. Some people are coming to rent to take pictures there for their business, entrepreneurs. It's so many different things you can do. You have not missed the boat. It's still selling. It's still going. It's still going, absolutely. And just to kind of add to Chrissy's point, where she said that, and I'll stand up, excuse me, a lot of people sometimes say, oh, the market's not good, I'm not sure. So one of the things I want people to keep in mind, and we get this a lot of people say, I'm going to wait to purchase when the rates go down. We hear that a lot, right?
Yes.
Don't do it. So let's talk about COVID real quick.
Yes.
During COVID, the rates dropped down. That's where I got my 2.5%. I didn't have that when I first bought the house. But when I seen that my client had that, I told my husband, we're refinancing. We did it the next day.
Yes.
So, right? So what happens is that when the interest rate goes low, everybody is running out. So what do that do for the sellers? It drives the price up, right? So what happened during COVID, what Christy and I experienced, just like many other realtors and brokers, you have clients now, the house is worth $350, but they have 20 offers. We've even seen the house for up to 50 offers. So now the buyer winds up paying $30,000 over. So let's think about this. You have a lower interest rate. So you got the lower interest rate, but you paid $30,000 over. Fast forward. We're in 2025. You want to sell your house. Your house is not worth what you paid. So when we think about interest rate, it's okay to purchase when it's higher, because guess what? You get the price for what it's worth, or you walk in with equity, and guess what? You turn around and refinance later. So now you got a lower interest rate later, and at the price you want the price to be. So when people say that, yes, it's a great thing to have a lower interest rate, but when that comes out, 100 other people is coming out to the purchase, and now you're fighting. And not only that, what we witness is that you really don't even get the house that you totally want, because you're selling because the interest rate is low, and you have paid more. You have to think if it's worth it. Yes, sir.
How soon after purchase you refinance?
6 months. Yes, 6 months. That quick. That quick. You sure can. Right. Yeah. So I tell people, don't get so caught up, in other words, about the interest rate, because when you buy higher, you're getting it for what it's worth, and you can always refinance. So now when you came in lower, and if you paid over the price, now when you turn around, you're in the negative, and it's hard to try to sell that house.
You want the equity.
You want the equity.
Your goal is to walk in, with that.
Absolutely. So remember the client that, because even Christy client that she had just closed on a couple of days ago, walked in with equity. And remember the client that I had in Hampton, the house was $379, we got it for $368, so they instantly have equity, instantly. And it actually could be higher by the time it appraises, because more things are building and selling during that time. So when we close in the next month, more houses have closed and they have built more. They're gonna have more equity. That's what we're looking at, equity. Home ownership. It's so important. Number one, asset, the equity.
Can I interject for a second?
Yes, ma'am.
I love that everyone is talking about the refinance process, but I want to make sure that y'all understand when you go to refinance, you want to look at the stipulations that your loan is not starting over. Okay? And so I want to make sure that you all understand, yes, we love the refinance. I was actually going to point out the fact that I have learned being around all these real estate experts that, you know, and I go to a lot of real estate networks.
She
Sometimes I'm
does.
the only
She
person
goes
in
more
the
than me,
room that's not
actually.
in real estate. But I say this to say, when you are looking to refinance, and I'm glad that all of you are a little surprised that you can refinance at the 6 months mark. Look at the stipulations of the loan. You do not want your loan to start over. Okay? So that's very important whenever you go to that table.
Absolutely. Thank you, Alexia. Guess we're around each other a lot, huh? These are great questions, really good questions. And I truly hope through this seminar today that you guys was able to really just get a glimpse of Christy and I and what we do and how we care. You know, again, for us, it's not a job. This is our calling. And we really enjoy it. She and I, Christy called me 11:30 at night. I'm on the phone with her 6 a.m. And we are thinking things through. We are thinking this is a situation. What else can we do? Let's try this. Let's think out the box. Oh, let's call so-and-so. Let's see if they can help. We really do care because, again, this is not your house. This is your home. This is your safe space, right? So your safe space is important. And we want to make sure you get the best, nothing but the best. So I just hope that that was felt through this seminar between us and, you know, who we are and what we stand for.
I do have a question.
I was told that you have to look into the area that you're buying the house. How true is that?
Absolutely. When you say look into it, do you mean in terms of just kind of searching?
Where you're purchasing. We're looking to purchase. Say you want to look forward to, I say in the future.
Oh, I see what you're
as
saying.
an investment. Don't you have to look into the area that you want to purchase as your future investment?
Yes, that is a great question. So we're looking at the location. Oh, she kind of brought back to the slide. No, you're fine. It's okay. No worries. You're fine. These are the things that we look at. But I want to take it a step further with your question. Depending on, as far as the investment, I've had people look as far as, which is good, what is expected to be built in this area? Is there a Walmart coming? You know, is there food? Because things like that drive up the price up. Yes, so it is correct. We don't have all the future plans, but there are some future plans that we can get access to see what's happening. I did have a client in Decula, and we was able to determine what was going to be built. It was going to be a whole new shopping center. She bought the home in Decula. That was important to her.
So also, I had a friend that purchased a house, and I realized the real estate agent, I guess, just wanted to sell the property. And she said, don't worry, you got a 1/3 acre. You can build on it. Come to find out, he cannot build on it. You know, so I just see where she just wanted to sell and get her little profit. But you have to find out what you can build on that property before you purchase.
Absolutely. Some properties.
You have to, yes, and he wanted to put on a sunroom. He can't do that. He has to get an engineer, and he has to get that. He has to get this. Like a lot of things that he wants to do, he cannot do it, even though he was told you can do anything with the property. Don't worry about it.
I'm so sorry that happened to him because that is not true. It's not. You have to see what the land is zoned for. So there are zoning restrictions. Some of them you can do commercial, some homes, some both. It just depends. You have to see that. And to be honest with you, the person, the listing agent, meaning the person who was representing the seller, when I am representing the seller, it is my job and my duty, yes, to do that research. And for me to let the buyer's agent know, this is the land, this is what you can do, and this is what's happening. There should be a survey to show. Unfortunately, some agents do not do that, unfortunately, and that's why I'm so sorry that happened with him because that's a big deal. He already put money out to purchase the home. But it is the listing agent duty. Now, even if I'm representing the buyer, I'm going to still do that.
Yeah, I was about to should, you know, when you first speak with your client, you're seeing exactly, you know, what their goals are, what they want to do with that property. And, you know, we can do, you know, our due diligence and, you know, research to see if that's even, you know, able to be done, you know, when it comes to zoning. So on both sides, you know, it should have been, you know, if the listing agent didn't say it, the buyer's agent should have, you know, caught it in the beginning.
It's definitely, you know, even though it should have been a listing agent, at the end of the day, you represent your client. It is your job and your duty to do the work. So let me give you an example. I have years, it's been maybe about 4 years, I think, maybe 5, but it was a couple that, older couple that moved from Texas. And Miss Sherry, her and her husband bought, they was coming to retire. And they had horses, they wanted something with a lot of land, and so you know the house. And so we settled on Covington, great price, great location, 11.65 acres, right? So this is what happened, and it actually worked out for Miss Sherry. When we went to do the appraisal, it came back that it was technically 2 separate lands. See, the listing agent had it listed for 1. So the price that it was, the house was $350, 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom ranch on 11.65 acres. So the appraiser said, well, wait a minute, these are 2 different lots. So if these are 2 different lots, the lender could only sell to the lot that has the house on it. See what I mean? So that tells me, number 1, the listing agent didn't do their due diligence. It's 2 separate lots. So,
Something good came out of it.
of course, of course. So the lender and I spoke to the closing attorney, and my client was not going to not buy that house without all the acres of land that they wanted. So what we came up with was that the land that sat on the left side, and I think that land was, I don't remember the number, but I want to say it was like 5.6 something or something like that. Sold that land to my buyer for $1. She got 5.65 acres for $1. And then the land that had the house on it, $350. Because the way we looked at it was that you were going to sell all of this with the house for $350. Let's just continue the transaction. But in order to do so, we're going to sell this for $1 because there has to be a dollar amount for it to be valid, right? So this would be $1, and this is $350. The lender cannot lend to land without a house on it unless you get a land lender. But the regular lenders you see, it has to be a house on it. So I bring that up to just say, to kind of circling back to your point, it does start with the listing agent. Because truthfully, if that listing agent had caught that, that means that if the house with the land on it appraised for $350, this was going to appraise for a higher number by itself, just by itself. But they didn't do the due diligence. And that's what we talk about when we think about your client, your needs, your want. It requires everything. We can't just say, hey, you said it's on 3 point. No, we have to go and look and verify and make sure what we're listing. So moving forward, Ms. Sherry decided she wanted to sell. So when I did, of course, 2 separate. She said, Shakia, I want to keep this side for my family, and I want to go ahead and sell this lot with the house. Every person that came through tried to get us to sell that side with the house, right? You remember? They tried. Oh, they tried it. I had one person that submitted an offer to us 5 times, and I said, sir, please stop putting that on there. We're not selling.
They tried it.
They tried it over and over again. You see what I mean? So for her, she was able to get more on the house with the land, and she has this side still in her family. But again, if I would have had, if I didn't know that, I would have done a due diligence to see that it was 2 separate lots. And now, Ms. Sherry, if you decide to sell this lot, this is how much this is, and this is how much the house is worth now. It's due diligence. We have to do it as agents. Unfortunately, not everyone does it, and that's so unfortunate, but as you can tell, that's not who we are. So it's just the research and the work. But I hope that answered, or it kind of, okay. Wonderful.
I do have a question. I want to circle back to investment property because I do realize
Yes.
investment properties. And so what does that look like now? Definitely the boat has not sailed.
It has not.
It has not sailed, and I'm a firm believer in real estate as a great investment.
Yes.
You don't have to live in the home to acquire equity. And so I definitely want to have the wheels turning in terms of what does that look like, and if they would like to buy an investment property. I know you're not the lender, so what does that look like in terms of loans, or what process, what would that look like if I wanted to, say, buy a house and rent it, or, if I'm not in that area, what does that process look like for someone who is not savvy in the real estate market?
Absolutely. So one of the things that we want to start with is understanding when people say investment, what does investment mean to you? And what does that look like? Because for some people, it may be short term. Some people are long term. Some people say, hey, I want to do rental. I want to do Airbnb. I want to take the house, flip it, and sell it. So we have to understand what does that look like first. Because where we are today, to be quite honest with you, the interest rates are higher than what they were. So it has to make sense for what you want to do as an investor. And if the numbers don't make sense, we're either going to say, let's look at this option, or let's wait. It just depends. So one of the things that the lender will do, they're going to see exactly what kind of loan you would qualify for. Because depending, there are some that you have to put down 20%. There's some things where they have bank statement loans, and Christy's a little more familiar with that, just depending on the situation. And then also, sometimes it may not be 20%. So we have to see what does that look like. Another part that I just wanted to point out is that, are you out of state as an investor? My mom is an investor. She lives in New Jersey. She has a house here. But if she decides to sell, because she's out of state, she has to pay 3% additional. IRS want their money. Right? So it's a lot of things that we have to look at as an investor and what makes sense. So the first step would be to speak with the mortgage lender. Hey, this is what I have in mind. This is what I'm thinking. They have to lay out the options. Yes, everything is still selling. You can still do it, but it has to make sense for what you want to do and where we are in this time. And when we look at down payment, we look at assistance, things of that nature. So yes, so it is a process to it. It just depends on what you like to do and what's going to make sense for that. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. I'm glad that you, I'm sorry, Christy.
No, I was just gonna add in, and then, we'll take a look at the comps to see what it's being rented for, like what your rental price, like an estimate of what your rental price will be, to see, like she said, if it does make sense, if that investment makes sense.
Thank you for adding that.
Yes. Wonderful. I love that you first started talking about what makes sense. In the past couple of weeks, we have spoken to a lot of the terminology that you have, the verbiage that you have said today. So everyone in here should know, okay, what are my investment goals? Because that is something that we did talk about.
Yes.
And so when you're stepping into all of this investment thought process, you should already have outlined what is the goal for this investment. What is the process in terms of what's good for my family, what we've agreed on. You all should know what the credit score is. You all should know what your credit reports look
Yes.
like at this point, right? And another thing you all should know, okay, I'm going into the next phase of life. What is the plan for the next phase of life, and how does the investment, whether do we sell our home, do we purchase a smaller home, what does that look like for me? So you all should be having those sort of conversations, because we've definitely spoken about that. So I appreciate you using the same verbiage. So a lot of things that this dynamic duo have spoken about, you all should be familiar with it at this point, right? Yes?
Yes, yes. Professor Alexia.
Thank you.
Absolutely, but to that point, thank you for bringing that up, because we're in sync, and it is the truth. It's, you have to look at, everyone is in a different place in their life, right? Everyone wants to go somewhere different. What works best for you and your family is not going to work for the next one.
Correct.
I get that a lot, and it's okay. I'm always open to things when people come, and it's okay. And I have the same honest conversations. We have to look at you, your circumstances. What does it look like in the next 10 years for you? What do you have planned? What's happening? My daughter is about to graduate high school. My son is going into to high school as my daughter is leaving. So my husband and I may say, hey, okay, now we can change some things and do some things. But my sister has two girls. She's a single mom, and one of her daughters is in college, and for her, she may not be able to do that. See, we're two different people. It's two different directions, two different goals. So as we discuss this, it is good to just take a look, to sit down with your family, your significant other, your children, see where you are and see where you guys want to be at. And then speak to us, and we'll help you get there.
Yes, yes, yes. Any other questions? Okay. Speak now, but you don't have to hold your peace. You can
Absolutely not.
You can always reach out. Their information is there, and
Yes.
the business cards are there. Take the time to really ask the questions, and if you want to speak with them in private, they are more than happy.
Yes.
And I truly appreciate you coming out on this sunny, rainy day.
Hey,
Yes.
it's sun now, so.
and spreading the knowledge. So thank you so much. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, guys. We appreciate it.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you, everybody. Y'all had some amazing questions.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we do have some upcoming sessions. At this point, we have taken you all the way through. We have 5 and 6 sessions remaining, and so the next session is introduction to investment in terms of retirement and trust and estate planning. So that's all part of the personal finance process. We just don't stop here, okay? We have to keep going all the way through, and so hopefully the budgets are created, the conversations in terms of your dreams, turning them into reality and taking the necessary steps to make them a goal and attainable goals. So you should have already have those written down and understand what your finance looks like, your financial resume. You should have already have built that out. So going into the next 2 sessions, you kind of know where you stand, right? And the work that needs to be put into it, okay? But I thank you. The homework is just to continue to do what we've discussed. If you haven't created your budget, please do that. If you haven't gone through your credit report, please pull it and do that as well. And just assess yourself. And I'm going to go back to the original question. Would you lend you the money you need to attain your dreams? Would you lend you the money? You said you think about it. So we want to get to a place where the think about it. We want to get to a place where the think about it is